We'll call this meeting to order. Join us with the pledge to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Have a roll call.
Susan Alshire, Don Bagley,
Here.
Brian Maynard,
Here.
Phil Hoffman,
Here.
David Wilkins, Glenn Barron,
Here.
Landon Bagley, Chris Cox,
Here.
Dale Hughes.
Here. Call for a review and approval of the minutes from the February 6th meeting. Any additions or corrections? Yes, sir.
Well, there's one place where it talks about second page, number 5, the last sentence, believes the city has provided those lists. I don't know who's referring to whether Heather said that, I said that, or I said something else. And so with the understanding somebody will go review the tape and add that name to the minutes, then I move that we approve the minutes.
I'll second that.
Second,
I'll second that.
we have a motion, second, to approve the minutes as adjusted. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Next. Proposed amendment to section 3124.
Yes.
Proposed amendment to section 3124 of zoning code concerning R3 zone property. Open floor for a public hearing. If anybody has any comments, please step forward and turn the mic on.
The notice of the public hearing was published in the Guard. This change, the only change that we're making is that it will require at least 2,500 square feet per family in, this is an R3 designation, rather than the 1,500 that we currently have. And this is what, 2,500 is what the county.
Okay.
So this would just bring our regulations to that
To alignment.
same standard.
Yeah.
Anyone have any comments they want to add? Now we'll close the public hearing. Open it up for any comments from the commission. Anyone have anything you want to add to or ask about?
I think it makes sense, doesn't it, to just go ahead and be aligned with Boone County, as we talked about when we brought it up in the first place, so to pass it on to the board to approve, unless there's any concern about it.
Do we have any large apartments that wouldn't have complied with this, like Columbia Oaks, or I don't recall what the
I'd have to look to see what the plans were, I don't know if it's off the top
couldn't
of my
do
head.
Jacqueline Towers or anything, but you don't want those makes sense.
Any other comments? Any questions about? So we'll need, we're gonna go ahead and approve this, right?
So you would make a recommendation to approve this change to the Board of Aldermen.
Yep.
There's a second public hearing set for next Monday night at 7 PM. And then after that, the ordinance is ready to go, for the board to consider it that night.
I did have one question to ask you. Is this also gonna be covered in the, use for the R3, PUD, planning district?
Mm-hmm.
That can encompass this also?
Mm-hmm.
Do we need to make any changes for anything on that before we proceed?
I believe it refers, that ordinance refers back to this, to the regulations for this,
Okay.
for the lot size and area.
You might wanna check that. I believe you're correct, though.
I was reading it today, pretty sure that's what it says. You don't want that double check before we pass it?
If we can. Mhm.
Might be good for me to go print it. See if I can find it on my phone. It doesn't specifically say that it is different.
So then all we need the motion as it is. So, make a motion that we pass this on to the city council with approval.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Bring us down to discussion regarding number of houses allowed per street in a subdivision, section 30.1-24, subsections G and H.
This is actually something that Don Borman brought to my attention, and I'm actually looking at Boone County's code, and I'm not finding it in the right place.
The fire code?
Well, in our fire code does not spell it out. It was different. So Boone County is different than us as far as the number of houses that they allow on a street. their fire code is different. We adopted the 2015 fire code, but I read through our ordinance and it does not say anything about this in our fire code at all. It only says it in our subdivision chapter.
Okay. You want me to address this?
Yes.
All right, a few years ago, when we redid the subdivision codes, Lynn and I worked on it quite a bit. And Lynn wanted to add a section in there on the maximum number of units that would be allowed on, with a single outlet to a public street, or to a larger street other than residential. And what was in there was 150 units, and I didn't think anything of it at the time. It seems sensible to put a requirement in there that you can't just have many units out there, houses or apartments or otherwise, and just have a single entrance out to a public, a major public road. Because it just bottlenecks everything. If there's fire in there, or if there's utility work or street work that has to be done, it can bottleneck all that traffic. So it made sense to do that. I never really thought anything about the number of units. I was looking at this and I was thinking 150 units, and I'm thinking, that just sounds kind of high. Southwest Country Estates has 135 to 140 lots that are supposed to be in it. Some of those have now been made double lots and have been made into a single lot, so I mean, there's a little bit fewer. But still, it's well over 130, I believe, that are in there. There are 3 entrances for that one. Cobblestone Estates, there's quite a few fewer houses in there, but it has 2 entrances. Emerald Point has 2 entrances. Southwest Country Estates has quite a few lots, but it's still less than what Southwest Country is, and it has 2 entrances. So I was thinking what would be an appropriate number, and I was thinking maybe half of that or maybe a third of that. And I talked to county planning about it, and county planning says that in the fire codes that the county have adopted, and we've basically adopted all of the same building codes as the county has. But in the fire codes, there's a specific, the recommendation of the new fire code says no more than 30 units on a single outlet. So if you have a street in there, you can't have more than 30 houses or 30 apartment units that dump out onto another street. They have to, they have to have more than one outlet to do that. The county has decided that, the county fire department has agreed that they will go with 50. So the city of Columbia has 30 units on a single outlet. Boone County has a maximum of 50 units. So it makes sense for us to adopt the same one as Boone County. I'm not sure that we need to go as far down as what the city of Columbia does. I would recommend we do no more than what Boone County does. If anything, we might consider less because we've got denser population inside the city. But, it just kind of makes sense to go with that 50 number that the county has. And, the other thing that Heather and I talked about was traffic study, and there's provision in our ordinance for a traffic study. It says anything over 100 units, the developer is required to take care of. Anything less than that, the city is responsible for, and then whether that's the city administrator or whether the city hires somebody, you have to look at how many, what the traffic is. The county has a much more restrictive policy on that. And basically their requirement is any subdivision is required to do a traffic study, even a 1-lot subdivision. Now what they have is a waiver process, and I don't particularly like it. And you can request a waiver on that. And if you've got 1 or 2 or 3 units, especially if some of those are existing houses and you're dividing them off of a larger piece, so that they're just now on separate parcels, they will waive that requirement for a traffic study. And the way they do it is the county is responsible for taking care of it up to a certain number, and beyond that, the developer is taking care of it. But regardless, even if the county takes care of it, the developer pays for it. And which I think is probably a good idea, because we don't have anybody, Heather's not a traffic engineer, I'm certainly not a traffic engineer, and we don't have anybody else who really knows that much about it. This can be done, with, there are some engineers in Columbia who, have done this, they've learned how to do this. And the county will let any, professional engineer sign that. They do, however, make sure that, all the right elements are covered in that, because they've got previous traffic studies, they know what to look for. If the engineer does not cover the right things, then they're gonna take it to the traffic engineer, let him review it, and tell them whether it's adequate or not. So if they have any questions about what the, what one of the local engineers did, they're going to have it reviewed by their traffic engineer, that they hired to do this. So that's something that we might wanna consider, and I would certainly think that, you know, the same break point, at the very least, the same break point of 50 would be considered for that. And probably less, because even 50 units, I think he was talking something like, for each unit, you figure, 4 trips per day. Maybe it was more than that, so it starts adding up real fast as to what you need. And the way of construction, because you're gonna tear up, you know, you're gonna have construction traffic in there, possibly tearing up streets and things like that. So those are 2 areas that I think probably need to be addressed in the subdivision ordinance. Heather and I also talked about one other change to the zoning ordinance, and we talked about adding an A1 zoning in there. Currently, our lowest zoning is R1. There may be reasons to have an A1 zoning. If we bring something in and it's gonna stay agricultural for a while, it's not gonna, nobody's gonna do anything with it. Columbia does that, they have an A1 zoning. And it's automatic when you bring it in that if you don't apply for anything else, you automatically go into the A1 zoning, and then you have to request a rezoning later on. And so it sort of makes sense to do that, because we don't have any fall place. Right now, the property that we just annexed is just unzoned. And, you know, it should probably have a zoning category on it as it comes in, and A1 zoning would be the appropriate thing to do something like that. It's kind of a placeholder, because in most places, R1 zoning is considered a given that you will get that if you ask for it. But, you know, if you don't ask for it, then it just goes into an A1 category, you can apply for that at a later date. So, that was pretty much what we talked about, wasn't it, Heather?
Mhm.
Okay, yes.
I don't recall the whole process when we went through that. It was addressed by the council once during one of our previous trips through the city code. And they addressed the issue of automatic zoning when things came in. Merritt had good arguments, and I don't recall what they were, to say no, there shouldn't be an automatic zone designation. And then we also had people who didn't feel comfortable with an A1 that might include like a feedlot that ends up right next to a single-family subdivision.
I would agree, and we would have to put categories in there as to what's allowable, and I would certainly think that feedlot was something we wouldn't want adjacent to, or within the city limits.
Part of it relates to the fact that R1 allows for almost any sort of agricultural use.
I guess the question was, why would R1 not be the catch-all, and then if you wanna do something different, it's gonna have to come through here, if you wanna rezone
And I
that.
can't remember why the council decided not to.
I mean, making another category, something else to bookkeep and keep up with, and you could have the agriculture problem potentially, but you know, if you don't look at everything, you could have.
I mean, most agriculture is pretty well exempt from most rules in the state. So you can't stop a whole lot of things, but certainly anybody who thinks they're going to bring in a feedlot or something into the city limits is asking for a lawsuit because of the smells that would be involved with it. And there would be, and they would probably lose. I can't imagine that they wouldn't lose. Out in the county, it's a different thing. But, yeah, I would certainly be inclined to let, have that researched by our city attorney. But, I mean, it just kind of makes sense. I know why, I know that Columbia does it, and I know why they do it.
Let me ask you, Don, what would it matter if it was just zoned automatically for an empty lot R1? Versus
It's
A1?
possible that they wouldn't want that, and I don't know what other, I haven't really looked at it all that close. Do we have a recreational zoning in ours, like for city parks? See, a lot of places have that, and so somebody might be more interested in that kind of category.
Understood.
And so maybe they'd rather leave it as an A1, or maybe they don't want anybody to subdivide it at the present time. But they're willing to bring it in.
When Columbia annexes something, do they put that automatic zone designation in the ads?
Well, if
Consider
they're,
them jointly, or
it's considered as part of the process of bringing it into the city. And I believe that unless they apply for something, then it automatically goes to A1.
it may have been in keeping with Merritt's objection to it, that there needs to be public notice of what the zone's gonna be when it's annexed.
Right, and I would suggest that be part of the public notice, even if it's more of an automatic process upon the city, but that's separate from the annexation, so the annexation and the rezoning both happen, and they should be separate issues. But,
Separate ordinances.
right, separate ordinances, but they should, it should be pretty well automatic that you go to A1 if you don't apply for anything else. I mean, I agree that should be, they are really two separate issues. And I know that in Columbia, a lot of times people will, we're gonna annex if we can have R1 and R2 zoning, as we request here, and the city can reject that, in which case the rezoning, they don't annex. But you have to ask for something other than A1, otherwise it just comes in as A1.
You realize we're gonna bring out the old bugaboo about domestic chickens and all that, because any agricultural zone is gonna have to allow for
Yes,
keeping of mass chickens and goats.
but that can still fall under city ordinances for the, the numbers and, things for, they would just have to be allowed more because they're bigger supposedly.
As for the number of houses, I can't remember, a lot of that rewrite of zoning got cribbed from other cities, or
Right.
things that we hadn't addressed, and
Right.
we picked them up.
And I realize that, and you and I
I don't
really,
know where we picked it up from, though.
you and I, never really discussed the numbers. You said you thought we ought to have that in there, and I agreed with you that it made sense to put something like that in there. We just never really got into the nuts and bolts of how many units there should be. But if you look at fire codes, I mean, that Boone County has, and if they're going with 50, no more than 50, it makes sense because it's a safety thing. So, I mean, that would make sense for us to do the same thing. There's gotta be a limit on how many you can put on a cul-de-sac or a series of branching cul-de-sacs that all come out through, onto one street.
Couldn't we make a requirement of having, if you're gonna have that many houses, have more than one access or
Right,
egress?
that's what it would be. You would have, you could have no more than 50 without having a second access.
Okay.
Right now it's
It's no
100.
different than the building code with life safety.
No, it says 150.
No, it's 100.
Oh, it says
100.
100. Okay.
There's a certain amount
There's a
of
certain-
that people put up with.
Well, the traffic study was 100, 150. No, the traffic study was 100.
It's 100 also.
Okay.
Any other questions?
But I mean, I talked to one of the county planners, and he told me these numbers of 30 and 50 for the city and the county. But he said we could also call the fire department in Columbia or the Boone County Fire Department and get those numbers directly from them. They could tell us where in the code it was. Dale Blumenkamp would be the contact for the county. I don't know for the city.
But the fire code's less, fire department, the fire code's less than that, 30%, 30
Right.
versus 50, yeah.
Can I interject?
Sure.
According to the fire code in Columbia, the planning and zoning, or not P&Z, planning and development in Columbia has it limited to 30 for a single entrance. Fire department comes in after that and they measure the lots. They measure the frontage, then they do diagonals, and you can have two exits And if it doesn't meet specific numbers, I think it has to meet like 2/3, they can still restrict it to 30, even with 2 exits. And a lot of it, I'm gonna tell you, is gonna deal with apparatus. By trying to, I drove a 46-foot ladder truck, so I understand exactly where we're going with it, because you try to maneuver one of these up into cul-de-sacs, and it is rough. So that's what they do. The fire department has the final say. So they have a set number of 30, and then the fire department comes in, they make their measures, and then they'll make their recommendations as to what's gonna be allowed. So,
So I mean, regardless of what our subdivision regs currently say, a smaller number can be used, and if somebody wanted to challenge that in court, as long as you have the safety data to back you up, which the fire codes would, then, that it's pretty unlikely that somebody would prevail in court over the safety issues.
Practical questions. In Darren's sort of draft subdivision, it has the one initial street that goes from Allen up and over and back down Hickman. That's what, maybe 18 houses, 16 houses?
Something like that, I'm not sure.
And that's going to be developed before anything else. So if he does it in phases, that would be the likely phase, and he wouldn't be held up.
That's correct.
Wait for us to do another iteration of changing the
Right,
subdivision.
right. Yeah, I mean, as long as he has 2 accesses, one is coming through Green Gables. As long as he brings another access in there, then it wouldn't affect him at all. And since the way he's got it drawn, if he were to go with that plan, then obviously he should be able to meet that requirement right off the bat.
You wouldn't have a lot of problems until he gets up to the north part, and or if he tries to build some apartments up at that north corner. In which case he would need access really to Jefferson Street.
Right.
Which is a good thing anyway.
Well, yes, because it doesn't make very good sense to run apartment traffic through a residential subdivision. That makes no sense at all. It's one thing that most planners will tell you they will not allow. If you're gonna have apartments, if apartments and single family is adjacent to each other, it's the single family that runs through the apartment streets rather than the apartment streets running through the single family streets. That's just almost never allowed. It just doesn't make very good sense.
I travel all over, that's what I see.
Can you tell me what the minimum cul-de-sac radius measurements are in Columbia? Do you know that?
I don't know that offhand, Mike.
I can tell you what they are. 47 foot is the right of way, and 38 foot is the street itself, side of the curb.
And that's tight.
And ours are 50 and 40. Columbia goes with a little bit less, and Boone County goes with a little bit less.
40's tight. We got a spot right
This is one area, Mike, where I would not argue that we go with Boone counties, because I think that is pretty tight.
It's tight even though our trucks
Yeah.
are shorter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Donna, do you know anything about that letter H where it's 200? You're talking about G, what about H?
That talks about 2 points, if you've got 2 points.
Okay.
If we're going to do the thing about 1 point, then we probably ought to change the number on the where you've got 2 accesses, how many. And I would suggest we get a traffic engineer to look at that for us and tell us what the best recommendation would be. Because I don't really know how many we ought to have. I just found out because I happened to talk to a county planner about this and found out it was in the fire codes for Boone County.
That's up to you. The council would want a planning and zoning recommendation.
I move we ask the city administrator to the one, how to amend that.
I think that would be appropriate, yes.
Could I interject something? Something you said about you would hope that something would come across through Jefferson Street. It says in here, streets which is dead end or stub into property which is adjacent to the property that I guess would go out on Jefferson Street can't be counted as a possible road,
Not until it's connected.
not until it's connected. So who knows when that would be?
Well, that's what you'd have to, or you wouldn't want to build there, is what he was saying,
Yeah.
basically. So that traffic doesn't run back through
It doesn't go back over to
he would have to put
Jefferson.
a street tie in,
He'd have to,
basically.
Yeah, in order to meet the collector status, you really have to go either to Highway 151 or Jefferson. Both of those are sub-arterial anyway. Well,
Well,
both arterial.
Hickman Street is designated as a collector, I believe. So he could take it out to Hickman. The problem he's got there is the fact that that's private north of Fairgrounds.
Okay. Got a motion for more information.
Staff's gonna address, I guess.
Do we have a second?
I second it.
Got a motion now for her to secure more information on it. Been seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So we'll pass on to the city council with recommendations for more information. Any other discussion or questions on this? Do we need to pass an opinion on to the city council now or after you get information?
After you have more information.
Okay.
There'll be an amendment to the ordinance. There'll be another public hearing before board of bodies.
Right. Anything else?
We'd like to set the next, we can go on it, we can get messing with it.
Okay, as we arrive, set dates for,
So the next date for the next meeting, I'm not completely confident that I will be able to get them out in the guard this week. But since I just got the, official rezoning requests today, this afternoon. What I had before was just a combined, I know what happened last time, that there was a combined rezoning request for 3 different properties or 3 different portions. So, I have it separated now, so, we'd be looking at Wednesday, April 1st, Thursday, April 2nd, or Monday, April 6th. So what works for the commission? Actually, the first is out. We have to have 15 days notice, so we'd have to do the second.
I vote for the 6th.
Okay.
I mean, if, that's Monday, right, the 6th? We have a council meeting that night anyway.
We don't have one, that's the first Monday.
Oh, that's for Monday, yeah, so Mondays work for me, I'm better, I mean, in town.
Oh,
Is it okay?
Yep.
Is everybody okay with that? I mean, I'm not.
Yeah, I'm good with
I'm
it.
just saying.
what time works best for you all, 6 or 6:30?
And 6 work fine at night.
6 is good? Okay.
and what was the date? April 6th?
Monday, April 6th, at 6 o'clock.
You all have that done? Does it work for you? Will you be here?
Will work for me. Anything else? Anybody else under, ask me a ride?
I know this is out of order, but, so that's your next planning and zoning meeting? And then at that time, you'll know what Boone County suggests, like 50 or whatever?
Yeah.
And then that's when you'll decide how many?
That's when
We'll
make a
discuss to make a
recommendation.
recommendation to the council. Right.
And Darren's rezoning will also be that night.
Yes.
Oh, Darren's rezoning of, has he turned something in then? That's definite? And where is that located? I mean, where can we see a copy of it?
I don't have it prepared yet. I just got it today, this afternoon.
Okay,
But as soon as I do, it'll be on the city website, it'll be here.
Okay.
I have this lovely poster that I'll put it on.
okay.
Just a big board. It'll be at City Hall, but it'll be online too. on
Okay,
City
is it
Hall.
basically what he already said before? Or have you
Yes.
to look at it
Yes,
with the, okay,
with the 3 different types of zoning. I believe it's the same project. You just officially submitted the request for rezoning today.
okay.
In 3 different.
But after the next meeting, it could all change though, right? Depending upon what you find out.
Should,
Possibly.
Okay.
anything else under as mayor items? Motion to adjourn,
Make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned.
Thank you, Donna.
Thank you.
Leadership.